What made you quit a job on the spot? I had a very stressful job and was expected to answer Slack messages from my boss at any time, or I would be fired. He was in a different time zone, so often I would be woken up at 3 a.m. being yelled at to do something. One day in the office, he was talking speep about me on Slack and accidentally posted it to a channel I was in. I was killing myself for this guy and he didn't even appreciate it. I packed up and left. Best thing I've ever done. Not on the spot, but I was passed over for a promotion for a role I'd been doing unofficially for 6 months. There was no official position for it when I started doing it. It was one of the manager's responsibilities and they delegated it to me. Honestly, I was happy to do it and I was frequently praised for how efficient and thorough I was doing it. So when an official position opened up to do it full time, I seemed like the obvious choice. A bunch of my co-workers didn't even apply for it because they told me they didn't think there was any point since I was obviously getting the job. They gave it to a guy that worked in a different department and had no experience using the complicated system required for that job. Then the manager asked me to train him in it. Except I wasn't really asked. I was told in a way that sounded like it was asking. We called it being voluntold. I refused. I said to the manager, if I'm not good enough to get the job, I'm not good enough to teach someone else how to do it. The manager then accused me throwing a temper tantrum. I quit about a week later. Honestly, that wasn't the only reason. That was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Even the other managers couldn't believe he said that. Worked at a restaurant as a server. We just catered a large wedding reception. The owner's wife was chatting with the wedding party all night and occasionally getting the drinks. At the end of the night she said she's taking her share of the tips since she helped so much. I say fine, even though that's illegal in our state. An hour and a half after the party ends, the restaurant is still a mess and the owner's wife is just standing around talking while I was supposed to clean up. It was almost midnight and I'd worked my other job earlier that day. I walked out without saying a word. They ended up giving me all of my tips on my last check. You dodged a bullet with that job. The wife sounds super entitled. Not quite on the spot, but the manager was telling the new hires, which included me, how he beat the crap out of someone for some reason that I cannot recall. Apparently the court case had been dragging on for quite some time. Alrighty. Little crazy. But what manager is completely sane? Then a few weeks later a hurricane comes through. Pretty bad. My house only lost power for a day. But most of my co-workers lost power for at least 2 weeks. So we eventually go back to work and the manager is telling us the harrowing story of how he managed to find a generator when a hurricane is coming. I'll spare you the details. But it's pretty much impossible to find a generator if a hurricane is about to hit. So this nutcase is trying to install this generator at his house and sees someone driving by, eyeballing his generator. Or so he imagines. Like any completely normal person, the manager pulls out a gun and fires a few rounds into the air to scare them off. I can only imagine what the poor person driving by thought when he saw this asshole pull out a gun and start shooting. In response to the gunshots, his neighbor comes running over. Why has no one called the cops yet? To see if everything is okay. My manager tells him that someone is trying to steal his generator and if it goes missing, he's going to hold the neighbor responsible. At this point in the story, my mouth is hanging open and I'm like, WTF did I just listen to? This man, why is the neighbor responsible for his generator? None of this makes sense. I slowly noped out of that job. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he ending up murdering all of his co-workers one day in a fit of rage. I had a boss scream, "This is a dictatorship," and I'm the dictator in a meeting while slamming his fist on the desk. Seriously. That's sad. Like really pathetic. Damn. Yup, grabbed my stuff and rolled out. Dude can keep his sad little kingdom. I had worked for a cleaning company and I had a total disaster of a person named Tina as my manager for about 4 months. Tina would work the night shift with the crew and basically did nothing. She would leave the majority the work for me to do during the day when it was a lot harder to do as I had my own list of duties as well as whatever she left for me from her own list. I was teetering on the edge of quitting, but I hadn't found a replacement when one day I got a call from head office that Tina had quit, and for about a month the job was exceptionally better and I effectively was my own boss. Things were going remarkably smooth for again about a month when I got a text message from Tina asking me to do a bunch of extra stuff. I called the owner and they told me that Tina had approached them about coming back and that they were rehiring her in her former position, and I literally just packed up and walked out about an hour into my shift. I had zero intention of working another minute for that woman and held to it. Owner pulled a gun unloaded on us during training to prepare us for armed robbery. The debt relief law firm I worked for stole 19,000 in incentives for a young family that was in distress and losing their home. It was soaked up in bogus attorney fees and high-fived about in the office. I got blamed for something that wasn't my fault. Was in an argument with our VP or marketing because I had the audacity to suggest a solution that would have avoided our problem instead of accepting fault for something I didn't do. He told me he doesn't pay me to think. So that was my last day. Had a job where the people were toxic. The management was mostly toxic. And the other techs made themselves look better by making other techs look bad. I had 2 guys on my shift who would go behind me during maintenance or repairs and undo stuff I did and call it out over the radio for all to hear. So I started recording myself making the repairs. And when I got called out and showed the video, I was told you're not supposed to have your phone out on the floor and got wrote up. I walked out with no warning in the middle of the busiest weeks of the year, leaving them short-handed with only 2 idiots to handle calls. Here's my question for Yat. Up. How the f*** did this place survive? Was it staffed by cockroaches or something? I was hired to do payroll and accounts at a small welding/engineering firm. Entering the timesheets and checking them against rosters, and I realized that the tight arse owner had been shorting employees almost 3 hours each week by not paying them for toolbox talks and all that stuff. Printed the proof. Told the boys in the workshop. And walked straight out. Emailed the resignation from my car. Not me, but a middle-aged tradesman where I work. I work underground and it isn't for everybody. Terrible environment and whatnot. This particular individual starting working and after a few weeks decided that it wasn't for him. Bad conditions and hostile supervisor. He approached the boss at the morning meeting and told him that he wasn't going underground and that he was quitting. The boss told him that he had to give him 2 weeks notice, and without missing a beat the guy replied, "For the next 2 weeks you're gonna notice that I'm not here." Turned around, packed his speep and left. Was never heard from again. Man, that's a great line. I'll have to remember that. I am a physician assistant and took a job at an urgent care. After working there for about a month, I noticed some irregularities, such as some medications being expired and sometimes a lack of supplies. I wrote that off as the office manager not being as astute as she should have been and brought it up to the doctor who owned the place. He said he would talk to her and straighten it out. Then one of the medical assistants came to me and said, "You know this has been going on forever, right?" She then said that things would never change and to get used to it because the expired medications had been on the shelf for months and they were told to never throw them out. She then also told me that the autoclave, the machine that sterilizes instruments, was broken and all they did was wash the instruments in soap and water and put them in the autoclave anyway to get them as clean as possible. That was the end of that. I made out a formal complaint to the state medical board and never showed up again. The state actually came in the very next day and raided the place. They shut him down immediately. They found so many things wrong that not only did they keep the place out of business, they suspended his license. He was also prosecuted on federal charges because he was running a scam for truck driver physical exams. Probably inadvertently saved some lives. Good on you.